When the lawyer read my father's will, my brother smirked as if victory was his. But buried in the final page was a clause only I knew existed. One that turned his triumph into a trap and made me the unexpected heir to everything. The room was heavy with silence, the kind that presses against your chest and makes every breath feel louder than it should. The lawyer's office smelled faintly of old paper and polished wood, but beneath that was something sharper. The tension of a family waiting to hear who would inherit a lifetime of power and wealth. My brother sat across from me, his lips curled into a smug smile, as though the outcome was already written in his favor. He leaned back in his chair with the arrogance of someone who believed the world owed him everything. I noticed the small details others might have missed. My mother's hands trembled as she clutched her handkerchief, her knuckles pale against the fabric. My uncle shifted uncomfortably, clearing his throat as if the silence was too much to bear. My cousin avoided my eyes, staring at the floor, perhaps already calculating what this inheritance might mean for him. Every glance, every twitch of movement carried weight. My brother leaned toward one of our relatives, whispering just loud enough for me to hear. "It's already mine," he said, his voice dripping with confidence. "Father always favored me. This is just a formality." His words weren't new. I had heard variations of them my entire life. At school, at family dinners, even in private moments when he wanted to remind me of my supposed inferiority. He thrived on humiliation, on making me feel small. And now, in this office, he was certain history would repeat itself. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and began to read. His voice was steady, deliberate, each word chosen carefully, as though he understood the weight of what he was about to reveal. My brother leaned forward, impatient, tapping his fingers against the armrest. I remained still, my hands folded neatly in my lap, my face calm. Inside, though, I carried a secret, a knowledge that would change everything. The lawyer's pacing was slow, almost theatrical. He spoke of my father's accomplishments, the legacy he had built, the sacrifices he had made. My brother smirked, nodding along as though the words were meant to glorify him. I watched the lawyer pause, his eyes flicking briefly toward me before returning to the page. That pause was deliberate and I knew it. As the reading continued, the room shifted. My aunt's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across her face. My cousin's lips tightened, envy creeping in. My mother dabbed her eyes, torn between grief and fear. The atmosphere was thick with greed and anticipation, each person waiting for their share, each person hoping to walk away with more than the other. Then came the announcement of the inheritance. The lawyer's voice carried authority as he declared the division of assets. Gasps filled the room. Some relatives sighed with relief, others exchanged glances of envy. My brother's smile widened, his chest puffed with pride. He believed the empire was his, that the words spoken had sealed his victory. He even leaned back, whispering again, "I told you. It's mine." But the lawyer wasn't finished. He cleared his throat, adjusted his papers and spoke again. "There is one final clause," he said, his tone sharper now, commanding attention. My brother's smile faltered, just slightly but enough for me to notice. The lawyer's eyes met mine for a brief moment, and I felt the weight of what was about to unfold. The clause was buried deep within the will, hidden in the final page, overlooked by everyone except me. My father had trusted me with its existence, a secret I had carried quietly, waiting for this moment. As the lawyer read the words aloud, the room fell into stunned silence. My brother's face drained of color, his smugness replaced by disbelief. His lips parted, but no words came. I didn't move. I didn't gloat. I simply watched as the power shifted, as the balance of the room changed in an instant. My relatives exchanged shocked glances, whispers rippling through the air. My mother's trembling hands stilled, her eyes wide with realization. My uncle leaned forward, his jaw tight as though he couldn't believe what he had just heard. My brother finally spoke, his voice cracking. "That's impossible," he said, his arrogance crumbling. "This isn't right. Father would never." But the lawyer interrupted him, firm and unwavering. "It is written here in his own words. This clause is binding." The silence that followed was deafening. My brother's false confidence had shattered, replaced by humiliation. The relatives who had sided with him now looked away, unwilling to meet his eyes. The empire he thought was his had slipped through his fingers and he knew it. I sat quietly, my heart steady, my mind clear. This was only the beginning. The clause had shifted everything, but the story was far from over. My brother's downfall had started, and I knew he wouldn't accept it quietly. The silence after the lawyer's final words still echoed in my ears when my brother stormed out of the office. His face was flushed, his jaw tight, and his eyes burned with fury. I followed slowly, my steps measured, knowing he would not let this humiliation rest. Outside, in the dim hallway lined with portraits of stern men in suits, he turned sharply toward me. "You planned this," he hissed, his voice low but sharp enough to cut through the air. "You tricked father. You manipulated him into writing that clause." I met his glare without flinching. "You always believed you were the favorite," I said quietly. "Maybe that's why you never noticed when father trusted me more than you." His hand clenched into a fist, but he didn't raise it. Instead, he leaned closer, his breath hot with anger. "This isn't over. You think you've won, but I'll show everyone who you really are." His words carried me back to childhood, to countless moments when he had tried to overshadow me. I remembered the school debates where he mocked my nervousness, the family dinners where he boasted about his achievements while dismissing mine, the way he always demanded the spotlight. He had underestimated me then, and he was underestimating me now. That evening, the house was alive with whispers. Relatives gathered in corners, their voices hushed but urgent. Some spoke in support of my brother, insisting that father's decision must have been influenced. Others, more cautious, leaned toward me, offering quiet words of encouragement. I could feel betrayal spreading like smoke through the household, curling into every conversation, poisoning trust. My aunt approached me in the kitchen, her eyes darting nervously. "You know he won't stop," she said. "He's already telling people you forged documents. He's convincing them you manipulated the lawyer." I nodded, my hands steady as I poured tea. "Let him talk," I replied. "The truth doesn't need defending, it reveals itself." But the truth needed proof, and I knew where to find it. Late at night, when the house had quieted and only the ticking of the grandfather clock filled the silence, I searched through father's study. The room smelled faintly of leather and ink, the shelves lined with books he had treasured. I opened drawers, sifted through folders, and finally found what I was looking for. Letters written in his hand, contracts signed with his name, documents that spoke of his trust in me. One letter, dated months before his passing, read, "She understands the weight of responsibility. She listens, she observes, she does not rush. The empire will survive in her hands." I held the paper tightly, tears pricking my eyes. It wasn't just about inheritance. It was about trust, about recognition, about a father who saw me for who I truly was. The next morning, my brother's schemes began to unfold. He spread rumors among family friends, claiming I had manipulated father during his final days. He whispered lies to relatives, painting me as deceitful, unworthy. He even tried to bribe the lawyer, offering money in exchange for altering the interpretation of the will. I heard these stories from cousins, from neighbors, from people who had once respected him. Each rumor carried desperation, each lie revealed his fear. His arrogance had cracked, and beneath it was panic. One afternoon, I overheard him speaking to our uncle in the garden. "She doesn't deserve this," he said, his voice trembling with frustration. "I'll prove she tricked father. I'll make sure everyone sees her for what she is." I stepped forward, my presence startling them. "You don't need to prove anything," I said calmly. "Father's words are enough. They're written, signed, sealed. No amount of lies can erase them." My brother's face twisted with rage, but he said nothing. He turned away, his shoulders stiff, his silence louder than his accusations. Despite the humiliation, despite the manipulation, I remained calm. At night, I sat alone in my room, the letters spread before me, my father's words echoing in my mind. I remembered his advice: patience is strength. Let others reveal themselves. Truth doesn't shout, it waits. I lit a candle, its flame flickering against the walls, and whispered to myself, "I will not break." The days that followed were filled with tension. Relatives avoided eye contact, conversations stopped when I entered the room, alliances shifted quietly. Yet through it all, I carried my father's trust like armor. Each document I discovered, each memory I recalled, strengthened my resolve. My brother's desperation grew. He arranged meetings with family friends, tried to sway them with promises of wealth and influence. He even attempted to convince mother that father had been confused, that the clause was a mistake. But mother, though shaken, refused to betray father's words. You may not understand him, she told my brother, her voice trembling but firm, but he understood her. That's why he chose her. Her words silenced him, if only for a moment. I knew the battle was far from over, but I also knew I was ready. Betrayal had spread through the family, manipulation had poisoned trust, but I carried something stronger: truth, patience, and the quiet determination my father had instilled in me. And as I sat alone once more, the candle burning low, I whispered again, "This is only the beginning." The candle light in my room had burned low when I whispered to myself, "This is only the beginning." I knew my brother would not stop, and I knew I could not simply wait for truth to reveal itself. His arrogance had always been his weakness, and now it would become my weapon. The next family gathering was tense. My relatives filled the dining hall, their voices hushed, their eyes darting between me and my brother. He arrived late, shoulders squared, chin lifted, as though humiliation had not touched him. But I saw the cracks, his smile too forced, his laughter too loud. When he began boasting about father's supposed promises, I let him speak. He claimed father had told him privately that the empire was his, that the clause was a mistake. I waited until the room grew quiet, until every eye was on him, and then I spoke. "Father never lied," I said calmly. "But you did." The silence was sharp. My cousin leaned forward, curiosity flickering in his eyes. My aunt shifted uncomfortably. My brother's face flushed, his lips tightening. "What are you talking about?" he snapped. I reached into my folder and pulled out one of father's letters, written in his own hand. This is dated months before his passing. He wrote that I understood responsibility, that I listened, that I observed. He trusted me. Gasps filled the room. My brother's arrogance faltered, his words stumbling. He tried to laugh it off, but the letter spoke louder than his denial. That was the first confrontation, and it set the tone. Each gathering became a stage where his lies unraveled. Relatives who once doubted me began to share their own stories. My uncle revealed that my brother had borrowed money from the family business without permission. My cousin admitted he had overheard him plotting to manipulate investors. Each testimony added weight. Each revelation chipped away at his facade. I listened carefully, never rushing, never forcing. I let the truth emerge naturally, and with each passing day more allies came forward. People who had once whispered against me now stood beside me, their voices steady, their eyes clear. My brother grew desperate. He tried to challenge the clause legally, hiring lawyers, filing petitions, insisting the will was flawed. The courtroom became the final battleground. I remember the day vividly. The polished floors, the echo of footsteps, the heavy air of anticipation. My brother sat across from me, his expression defiant, his lawyers whispering strategies. I sat quietly, my documents neatly arranged, my heart steady. The judge listened as his lawyers argued that father had been confused, that the clause was invalid. My brother smirked, certain he had found a loophole. But when my turn came, I stood and presented the evidence. Letters, contracts, recordings, all in father's handwriting, all signed and sealed. The courtroom fell silent. The judge studied the papers, his brow furrowed. My brother's smirk faded, replaced by disbelief. His lawyers shuffled nervously, their arguments crumbling. Finally the judge spoke. "The clause is valid. The inheritance stands as written." My brother's humiliation was complete. He lowered his head, his arrogance shattered, his voice lost. The empire he had claimed was gone, and everyone knew it. But victory was not enough. I had to rebuild, to honor father's vision. The inheritance was not just wealth. It was responsibility, legacy, trust. I began with the business itself. I met with employees, listened to their concerns, restored their faith. I repaired relationships with investors, assuring them of stability and growth. I reached out to relatives, offering fairness, transparency, and respect. Slowly the cracks healed, the mistrust faded, and the empire began to thrive again. It was not easy. There were long nights, difficult decisions, moments of doubt. But each step reminded me of father's words, of his belief in me. I carried his vision forward, not for power but for purpose. And in the quiet moments I reflected on the journey. The pain of betrayal had been sharp, the humiliation deep, but it had given me strength. My brother's arrogance had taught me patience, his manipulation had taught me resilience, his downfall had taught me justice. I realized that revenge was not about destroying him. It was about proving myself, about claiming my place, about honoring the trust Father had placed in me. The story closed not with triumph but with peace. I had endured betrayal, faced manipulation, and emerged stronger. I had rebuilt the legacy, restored trust, and found my voice. And as I stood in Father's study, the letters spread before me, I whispered once more, "This is not the end. This is the beginning of my place, my strength, my legacy."